I have to confess that my life has been an adventure. It's been a journey. And I always questioned myself and where I was going on the journey. And if the journey was interesting, I would go off the path at a moment's notice. So I really started in my life with great aspirations to be an archaeologist. My mother decided that she was going to dissuade me from this pursuit. You have to remember, I'm a young black female in America in New York City, and that was not an appropriate course of action. That was not an aspiration that my mother could even wrap her brain around. So she figured that to dissuade me from doing this, she would get me a job at a museum. And she called up the Museum of Natural History in New York, and she said, look, I have this child, and she's determined that she wants to be an archaeologist, and I want you to give her a job, but I don't want you to pay her. I don't want you to encourage her. I don't want you to pay her. I just want you to give her a job. So, of course, my house started to fill up my bedroom with boxes of soils and raw garnets and all this stuff, and my mother was just fit to be tied. Well, my life went on, and I really wanted to major in art, but again, they thought, no, that was a bust. No, she's strange enough, no. So I went to school, and I tried to major in teaching, and that was a waste, and I came home from Buffalo, too much snow, and I studied in New York for the next few years, studying art and literature. Well, that was the time, those were the years where the government had what they call anti-poverty programs. And I got a job teaching art on the streets of New York City in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. And every day a truck would come and pick me up and about 12 high school kids, and we would go to 2 different parks in that day, and we would set up workshops outdoors. And I did that all summer. And it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating, and it was a real learning curve, and it was also a big grow-up moment for me. So while I was doing that job, a woman came around one day, and she said, look, I have these scholarships to go to, for these kids to go to college. And I said, these kids are lucky if they make it through the end of the summer not going to jail, because they don't really have anything to support them or encourage them. And they're so early in their high school years that they're not ready for college. Well, she was really frustrated. She just looked at me and she says, well, have you finished college? And I went, no. She says, give me your name and address. She gave me a name and address. I gave it to her. And the job ended for the summer, and my mother's we're in the kitchen table. The kitchen is the place where all the action happens in the house. My mother's going, okay, now what? I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a clue. Well, I had let my mail pile up for a couple of weeks, and so I was sitting there opening the mail. I open this letter, and I read this letter, and I go, I can't believe my eyes. So I give them to my mother, and I said, read this to make sure I'm reading what I'm reading. My mother reads the letter. She puts it down on the kitchen table. She goes to the living room. She comes back with her pocketbook. She takes out a $20 bill, and she gives it to me. She says, you will go take a shower, change your clothes. After you do that, you will call this number and do whatever they say to do. The letter that had been sent to me told me I had a full scholarship to any city university college in New York City. Went, signed up for every art course they had, and that was the beginning of my journey. When that was finished, I was then applying for another fellowship from the Ford Foundation for minorities to get their doctorates. I didn't want a doctorate, but I got used to the scholarship money. You know, it was really nice, and the stipends, and I got art books, and I got art supplies, and I was really loving the academic life. So I applied for this fellowship from Ford Foundation, and I didn't get it. Anyway, I got about 25 offers to go to school, full scholarship again. But you have to remember, historically, this is the moment of Martin Luther King's assassination. So I immediately figured out, I said, this is a post-Martin Luther King stress syndrome response. And this is the guilt. It was the beginning of affirmative action. Anyway, I finally opened up one of the letters, and it came from Johns Hopkins. And in the letter, it said that my name had been passed to them from the Ford Foundation. And what had happened is that the Ford Foundation had only 50 awards to give out that year. They gave out the 50 awards, but there were about another 50 of us, and they said, these are the names of the individuals. If we had had more money, we would have given them full scholarships. We recommend them to your university, and they sent it to the universities all over the country. So Johns Hopkins offered me full scholarship, stipend, the whole 9 yards, and I sent the application in on a Monday. They called me on a Wednesday. They flew me down on a Friday, and on Monday I sent my acceptance. So that's how I got from a public school to an Ivy League school.